I am Edmundo Tovar, Vice President of Educational Activities of IEEE Education Society. I would like to welcome to this webinar. You know that Education Society is organizing free webinar series to promote and give more visibility and diffusion in every format to the workshops selected and organized under the umbrella of our flagship conferences, Frontiers in Education Conference, EduCon Conference, TAIL Conference, EduNine.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Impagliazzo from Hofstra University in New York. I've been involved with computing education for over decades, but there's a new trend that is occurring in recent times, and that is the transition from moving away from knowledge-based learning to competency-based learning. And I'd like to bring you up to date on what is happening within ACM, IEEE, and the global community regarding this particular aspect. First of all, let me give you a few items here. I don't like to do this, but it's usually required by background in terms of my professional experience in education. And the items that I say represent my own opinion, and they don't reflect any endorsement of any organization. But I've been, as you can see from the listing, I've been very involved in assessment of programs and accreditation and in publishing books, and also many papers. So let's get started. One of the things that we're going to look at are this whole idea of competencies. Just give you an introduction to that. We're going to take a glimpse at CC 2005. Some of you already know that document, so I won't belabor it, but there are some highlights about it that are useful. And then the new project, which is a project co-sponsored principally by ACM and IEEE regarding the future of computing. And so we're going to take this in these orders, and at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. First of all, what are competencies? And some people think that this is just another replacement for the word knowledge, and this is very, very, very far from the truth. One of the problems we have today is the gap between what universities produce and what industries need. There's a tremendous gap. In the United States alone, there are 7 million unfulfilled jobs because the people who are applying for those jobs do not have the skills nor the attitude to fill those jobs. Many of those jobs are technology type jobs. For example, we can say, programming or software development is one major item. Of the 7 million vacancies, probably I would guess 1 to 2 million of them have to do with technology. This here is causing a problem between what industry has and what industry and what education gives, and the gap seems to be growing. In fact, we have a situation now that major companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon are simply bypassing the university. They are simply going to start hiring people from high school, good students from high school, and they will educate them themselves. They will train them with the skills and the attitudes that they need to fulfill the mission of the individual companies. This is sort of a disaster, a philosophical disaster for universities, because we cannot produce the people that industry needs. Although universities are not training grounds and they're educational institutions, there needs to be some type of bridge, so this that narrows the gap between these two types of institutions. So what are these things called? Competency? How do they relate to learning outcomes? Let me give you a sort of a dictionary definition of these here. Learning outcomes are the statements that describe significant and essential learning that learners have achieved, and they can reliably demonstrate, which means to know and do, at the end of a course or a program. So in this case, we're seeing that learning outcomes has to do with knowledge. It has nothing to do with performance. On the other side, we have a dictionary type definition for competency is the ability of an individual to do a job properly. So immediately we're in industry. And a competency is a set of defined behaviors that provide a structured guide enabling the identification, evaluation, and development of the behaviors in individual employees, which in effect are the students who are graduating. So we have here two different things. Universities talk about courses and course learning outcomes and program outcomes, and we have competency, which deals with the workplace. And this gap of definitions is something that we really must address, especially in the STEM area. So if we move forward, let's see, my screen froze here. Okay, don't know what happened. Okay, here we go. We have other definitions of competency. In 2014, the software engineering people, particularly through IEEE, developed the software engineering competency model. And it basically talks about competency as the demonstrated ability to perform work activities, that is, work activities, at a stated competency level, which is one of 5 increasing levels of ability to perform an activity denoted as a technician, entry practitioner, technical leader, or senior software engineer. So this is not my definition. This is the software engineering competency model definition. You could look at that on the IEEE website through the Computer Society. Also, we have a curricular report, which is the Master of Science in Information Systems, which was published in 2016. And that states that competencies represent a dynamic combination of cognitive and metacognitive skills, demonstration of knowledge and understanding, interpersonal, intellectual, and practical skills, and ethical values. So we see that we have here not just knowledge, but this talks about megacognitive skills, interpersonal skills, practical skills, and ethical values that is indicated through the MSIS 2016 report. Let's see, I'm having troubles with, okay. All right. One more thing here. Learning outcomes is defined through the IT 2017 report. Many or some of you may know about this report. It models the IT profession for a 4-year degree. It talks about learning outcomes as written statements of what a learner is expected to know and be able to demonstrate at the end of a learning unit, which could be a course or a module or program of some sort. So that's learning outcomes. Again, this here is based on knowledge and not on other things. Competence in this same report talks about the performance standards, performance, marketplace, workplace, standards associated with a profession or membership to an organization. Assessing some level of performance in the workplace is frequently used as a competence measure, which measures the aspects of a job in which a person is competent. So the big difference, again, okay, between dictionary definitions and the IT report and the MSIS report and the software engineering competency model is that the basic difference between what universities are doing, which are the learning outcomes, and competencies, which are what industry wants, which is based on performance in the workplace. So what is the meaning of competency in a more, I guess, broad view? From the academic point of view, we see that competency has to do with some knowledge, it has to do with skill, and it has to do with what we call disposition. And you need to have that in a particular context. You can't have competency just in general. So unlike learning outcomes which deal with knowledge, you can be very knowledgeable and know how to do crossword puzzles, and you can answer many questions about knowledge. Competency has to do within a particular context. Now, competency has been around for many, many decades or even centuries, because the medical profession, the dental profession, the legal profession, all the professions, or especially the licensed professions, you have to prove competency in the context of that profession. So if you may be competent as an accountant, but you're not competent as a surgeon, and that the context is different. So when we look at this, we can translate that formula into different ways, but basically it's knowledge and skills, and then the other part, the disposition, has to do with human ability, human behavior, human attitudes, the way, for example, getting to work on time, being able to communicate effectively with others. This type of thing is what we call this idea of disposition. So this is the academic version of competency. However, if we turn the tables and look at industry, what does industry consider competency? Well, it's knowledge, skill, and disposition and context again, all right? So that's the same. However, the meaning is much different. Industry focuses on skills, then it focuses on abilities, and then knowledge, or skills and behaviors and knowledge, or skills and human attitudes and knowledge. So where did this idea come from? Well, it did not come from academics. It comes from industry people who were part of the development of the IT 2017 report. The industry people specifically direct us to the fact that they really do not care what knowledge the employee has. As long as they have the skills to do the job and they have the proper attitude or ability or behavior in the workplace, and then whatever knowledge they have is always good. So from the industry point of view, if someone who graduated with a business degree is able to do the skills of a computer person, they will hire that person as long as they can do the skills. So this is a turnaround. This is a complete turnaround of what we think, we meaning academicians, that the university is doing. The university is producing students who are very knowledgeable. They teach them out of notes, out of textbooks, out of websites, okay? But they don't teach them necessarily the skills that they would need in the workplace, nor the attitudes and abilities that they need to have to function in industry or in government. So this here is industry telling us academicians that the wheel is broken and needs to be fixed, because they will hire the people with the skill before they knowledge. We also call that the academic myth. The academic myth, and you'll find that in the IT 2017 report. The academic myth means a belief that because you have high grades, you have an A average, you're going to get a job. Probably not. If you have a high grade, you'll probably make it to the first interview. After that, unless you have the other components, you will never make it to the second interview of a job. So it's important, therefore, to not just focus on the knowledge, which we all know how to do. We've been teaching for many years and know how to do the knowledge. It is the skill that has to be developed. So let's move on. I seem to have a problem here. Sorry. Don't know what happened. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see. It doesn't seem to advance. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So here's competency in the context of the IT, information technology, that appears in the IT 2017 report. Notice that we have knowledge, skills, and dispositions within their own domain. And then we also have the professional context. So let's start with skills. These are the capabilities and strategies for higher order thinking, interactions with other people, okay, and in a global setting. Dispositions deal with the personal and sociological, emotional attitudes and qualities that are associated with someone in a career. Knowledge we all know about because we teach knowledge for the most part. And that's the content, the mastery of content, being able to pass exams, and transferring learning from the book to the student or the teacher to the student. This is what we all know and have done. What we don't know and have not done is to focus on the skills and dispositions. For the IT context in the professional, it's the workplace, the employer involvement, mentorships, authentic problems, collaborative, project-based attitudes and learning and working, diverse teams, reflective practice, professional tools. All of these are in the IT type of domain. We would have a different context if this were, in a different domain, like science or something else, medicine or law. So if we ask ourselves what is competency, it is the intersection of those three pieces. Okay, it's where the skills interact with the dispositions, interact with the knowledge, and as I said before, industry cares, number one, for skills, number two, disposition, number three, knowledge. So when we look at this, we see that this here is the way in which we need to think of competency. More or less like a three-dimensional formulation of producing a graduate from a program who is ready to enter the workplace. So, where did all this come from and where are we going with this? Well, let me go backwards. Let me take you a few things. Some of you know this already, so apologize for for the repetition that may have happened. This is the CC 2005 report. As the date says, it was produced in 2005 and is somewhat outdated, obviously, since technology and computing has changed dramatically over the last 12, 15 years. So if we think of computing as a curriculum, so before 1990, we basically had three areas. We had the electrical engineers who did the hardware, we had the computer science people who did the software, and we had the information systems people who did business. However, there was a transition that after the early 1990s, there was the emergence of and flourishing of new programs, such as software engineering or computer engineering or information systems. In fact, in the United States, the first information technology program was at Rochester Institute of Technology, which was in the early to mid 1990s. So that's the newest of the fields. Computer engineering started earlier. Software engineering evolved over a decade or so before that, but they became sort of mature after 1990. So what ACM and IEEE put together was these curricular reports. CC 2005 is often called the overview report because it sort of amalgamated or joined current programs at that time that were current in the different areas. So we had, for example, CC 2001, which really was Computer Science 2001. Computer science went off to think that it was all of computing, but many people objected to computer science thinking it was all of computing. And so people in the other areas, information systems, software engineering, computer engineering, and information technology, all generated their own curricular recommendations. And the CC 2005 also recognized that there would be other areas down the road, that would emerge as technologies change. And in fact, there are. In 2017, ACM published the cybersecurity report. That was in December 2017, a year ago. There's data science emerging and possibly artificial intelligence as possible reports. The previous discussion on robotics would be included in that AI report, with use of robotic tools. So this is where we are, and our new project is to update this. But before I get to that, let me explain what was sort of essential in the CC 2005 report. These visuals are basically known throughout the world. People have seen them and discussed them and tried. If you haven't, then this would be a good place to think about this here. When we did the CC 2005 report, we tried to visualize what these different disciplines would be. So on the left, we had the theory types, and on the right, we had application and deployment. And then we stratified in 5 stratas the different types of things that happen in computing. And at that time, it was computer hardware, systems, software, application, and then organizational areas. And we use this as a sort of framework to try to visualize these. I was on the 2005 committee, and in fact, I was the custodian of these diagrams. So let me show you, for example, and this would be computer engineering. Computer engineering goes from theory to practice, It is basically the nuts and bolts, so it's on the lower level. It definitely deals with systems and goes into software, but then it stays away from application technologies and organizational units. The computer science, everyone agreed it was very theoretical, but people in computer science barely do the hardware. I mean, they may take a course or so, but nothing in depth where they get their hands dirty. They don't bother with organizational systems such as payroll and inventory and stuff. And generally, the computer science person is not involved with the actual deployment because if the network fails, you don't go to the computer science department to have it fixed. Okay, you go to the IT area. So computer science has sort of that profile. And information systems is very organizational. Those are the people who do the payroll, make sure the insurance company and the banks work, the ATM machines are functional. These are the IS people. They're very organizational oriented. They go from theory to practice, but they don't get their hands dirty with the development of computer hardware and things of that sort. The information technology people are very, very organizational and very, very hands-on. So this is the graphic for that, and you see that one of the things, and even today, the theory of IT is sort of vacuous. It's sort of empty. It's very, very, very few people exist in the world who have a PhD in information technology. However, that's changing, but even today you don't find many of those. And then finally, software engineering. This was an easy one because the software engineers deal with the software development, and they do with the applications, and they touch on systems, and so this was that picture. And if you take the union of all of these, okay, that is, you take all of the 5 diagrams and overlap them, you get this, which is the definition of all of computing. So this was an exciting time in 2005 because we were able to at least visualize some of these things. We also produced a set of tables, tables involving comparison of computing topics across those 5 discipline areas. We also developed for non-computing topics across those same disciplines. And we also try to provide graduate profiles for each of the 5 areas. And if you look and you go to that report, you will find these tables. They're very useful. They're somewhat outdated, of course, because technology has changed over the last 15 years, but they still have a merit in trying to explain the difference between a computer science person, for example, and a software engineer, and what they do and the types of work that they do. So where do you find all of this stuff? All the reports I mentioned, the CC 2005 report, very easily. You go to acm.org, all right, that's the Association for Computing Machinery. Then you click on the icon for education, and then you go to curricular recommendations, and you will find at least a dozen curricular reports going back I guess to 2001 through to date meaning 2017, 2018, and you can get everything there. You can download them. We even have Chinese translations for the computer engineering report and the computer science report, because China was very involved in the development of those reports. And so they were also very involved in the IT 2017 report, and there'll be a Chinese translation of that hopefully soon. So in moving on, what is this new project about CC 2020? Well, CC 2020 is I guess a big undertaking. Let me put it that way. Okay, right now it's a work in progress. It started about a year ago, all right, with preliminary activities in 2016. And ACM is the principal funding organization for the project, with some help from the Computer Society as well as other groups like the Association for Information Systems. The project has a task force. There's 38 people representing 16 countries from 6 continents. Members handle some of the ongoing activities, and there are 2 co-chairs, one from ACM and one from the Computer Society. A steering committee is a part of the task force. They're basically the executive group that tries to do all the planning and things of that sort. And then the project will also welcome contributors and reviewers for the work we're doing. Why do we have CC 2020, which will be published at the end of 2020? Well, we want a modern replacement for CC 2005. CC 2005, as you saw, is very well accepted for those who know about it. They use it. Parents use it. High school counselors use it, especially the diagrams to show the difference between this type of study and another type of study. This project is very, very futuristic. We're looking toward the 2030 vision, in the sense that what we do should be useful to 2030 and beyond. We, in addition to some of the diagrams that I showed you from CC 2005, there will be visualization tools for various things. For example, trying to visualize the meaning of competency within the 3 dimensions, the difference between technical skills and non-technical skills, and how they interact and things of that sort. We have data from industry that helps us with that. And also, we are hoping that the CC 2020 will be a pathway for future curricular reports. So when we expect, for example, Information Systems had its last update in 2010, we expect to have an Information Systems 2021 report coming out in 2 or 3 years, and that will reflect what the CC 2020 project sort of recommends. So, in winding down, where can you get more information? Well, first of all, there's a website that's under construction. All right, it's cc2020.net. You could also contact me through my email address, john.impagliazzo@hofstra.edu, and I'd be happy to guide you in either answering questions or guide you to other resources. So with that, let me say thank you, and let me ask if there are any questions, and I guess I'll turning it over to Edmundo or Ahmed, so to do that. So one question is, why don't we work during early stages of educating students to create an expert learner from theory to practice that will be aware of what is going around him and her in the real world? Do you think it is possible? I don't know why we don't do it yet. I believe there are several factors. to get teachers who are in the elementary and middle schools and in high schools to become involved with industry so they can know about the practice. The problem is high school teachers and middle school teachers will teach out of the book, and the connection with industry is sort of very loose. Do you think it's actually possible to do that? My answer is yes. ASEE, the American Society for Engineering Education, has a program that tries to develop students, with industry. It tries to connect the people from the industry area with the teachers. So it is possible that this can be done, and there have been efforts. How successful it is, I don't have any data on that. But there are efforts being made to connect the younger students with that. Sometimes we see this with math fairs. We see it with engineering or science fairs. I don't know. We have those in the States. I don't know if you have those in other parts of the world. But where I live in New York on Long Island, there's always a Long Island Math Fair, which is a big thing, and it gets students engaged. However, that's more theoretical. The important thing now would be get the students to learn more practical stuff, being more, quote, competent. To learn, at least they have to be skillful in something, and that has to be done with, that has to be done within a proper context. And I don't know, I don't have any data on that. I hope I answered that question. I see we have another one. Professional profiles and I will evolve quickly, faster than the curricula. Absolutely, absolutely. How can we adapt computing curricula to this dynamic world in IT? Okay. Well, one of the things we plan to do, I think it was you, Linda, who asked the question, is to make a website that is completely interactive and open to the public. All the material that we had in the 2005 report will be on that website. What we're thinking of is doing dynamic visualizations and have almost continuous meaning like once a year, updates of the recommendations of the visualizations. So, for example, if a student or let's say a teacher wanted to contrast their IT program with a recommended IT program, they can go right to the website and put their parameters and see how they match up to recommendations. We're also planning to see how any individual program, any place in the world, would compare to another program. Now, the way we do it now is we get to the website or the catalog of the two institutions and we look at the programs. But if this could be automated, which we plan to do, you can do this right away. And if you're not one part of the automated process, you simply put in your parameters and see how you match. So we plan to have this here as a dynamic website. We're looking for big money from Google or some other corporation that will sponsor the website, because we're all volunteers. We don't have time to build the website and to monitor it. So part of the idea is to have a very interactive process by which the professors, the students, the parents can all interact with this site in any way they wish to garner information. We'll also do the same thing as we did with the 2005 report. We will compare curricula today in CS, IS, IT, cybersecurity with with each other. So you can have a contrast or some kind of visualization. We're thinking of the use of heat maps to show where the strengths and the weaknesses or the convergence of programs will be used. This would be a large undertaking, but it will involve a significant amount of funding by a major organization, especially one who would be willing to take it on and sponsor it in the future. So yes, thank you for that question. It is one of the real things we want to do in this dynamic world. We have another question here. I don't see the question. Let me back up. All right. The training made from companies to their employees, excluding the university, can be a problem in their professional future development. Absolutely agreed. Okay. Universities should teach the knowledge and also the basic content necessary for comprehension, such as calculus and other things. Well, if universities are just going to, as I said before, if universities will just teach knowledge and they will ignore skills and they will ignore the dispositional attitudes of the students that are going through the programs, chances are they will not be competent to work in the workplace. There will always be students who will fulfill this competency, but not to the level. We have a real gap between what is needed and what is being produced. If universities are just going to be philosophical institutions, then the products of those programs will lead to situations where the graduates of those programs will not be able to enjoy the potential that they could do. They will always get a job, but they will be difficult for them to rise to that potential. So there's got to be some type of attitude change at the university level with the teaching and the types of curricula we do to make this work. For example, the use of more laboratories with courses is an easy way to start making this, closing this gap, because the students will be able to work with each other, they will have to communicate with each other, they will have to tolerate each other, get into arguments with each other, and all of that is healthy stuff because it allows the students to at least somewhat, I would put it in quotes, practice what the expectations are when they will be in the university. Should we teach basic skills like calculus, science, and physics, and et cetera? Of course we should. All right. But in the computing field, let's face it, even the top universities around the world, their graduates, at least half of them, go to industry. They don't go to graduate school. And for the average university, almost all students go to industry. Maybe 5% will go to graduate school. So 95% of all the graduates will go into industry. And so somehow there's a disconnect between the universities and industry. And we need to close or bridge that gap. Anything else?
John, this is Jorge. I have a quick question.
Oh, hello, Jorge.
How are you, John?
From you.
Nice to hear you again. Long time.
Yes.
Remember, John, that we created in our IT 2017 report a collaboration model between industry and academy. And the basic idea was to bring students directly into the industry so they can perform and practice in the real world. So start creating and getting their first skills.
Yes.
When I talk with this, also in Colombia, Peru, and Central America, especially my country, Costa Rica, I was pushing all these IT 2017 uh, publication all across the university here. And they come some teachers that told me, well, Jorge, this is interesting, but you know that I live in a crystal bubble and I have no idea really about the real world. So if somebody's going to teach me how to develop or perform new abilities and skills to these students, because I don't have an idea how to do it. So my question is, you think it's time to start working in a train the trainers, train the teachers in a different
Yes, it's
approach?
a very good point. We don't have the funding to do that for this CC 2020. Um, we would hope that once we make these recommendations, that that would become sort of a next step, because teachers who've been teaching wonderfully out of the university um, don't really know how to do the transition to develop skills and to attitudes and disposition of to develop students so they have positive attitudes and disposition. I mean, that's more like psychological, and for example, I'm not qualified to do that. So, I mean, I could help. One way to do it in a quick setting is to, well, I already mentioned doing more laboratories, but that's within the institution. But require every student to do either a work study program or internship. So they go out in the industry and they work. Some universities are starting to enforce that now. Or to graduate, you have to do an on-the-job internship. And I don't mean a summer job for 4 weeks. This might be that they work in industry for a semester. Maybe they have a reduced load, study load, and they spend maybe 20 hours or 30 hours in industry for a semester and take some classes in a different mode. So there would be a tremendous opportunity for students to learn about skills and to learn about attitudes and the workplace. It's also a wonderful way to get a permanent job, because the employer would be able to work with this student who might be a third-year student, and work with this student for, let's say, one semester. They know the type of student, they know their personality, and when the student graduates, they'll try to hire them right away because they already know them. So it's a win-win for both, because the student will develop the skills and the industry will get to know the person, the student, and then when it's time to graduate, they have a guaranteed job. So some universities enforce that. In fact, they make their students leave the university for one semester. Very similar to like a study abroad program where the students will take one semester and they'll go someplace overseas to learn new cultures and environments.
Okay, thank you, John. Has been very, very, very interesting webinar and presentation. I would like to give you thanks and to all the attendants, to all the participants in this webinar. Can you hear me now?
I hear you, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're most welcome.
It has been very interesting. I think that it deserved to wait for your presentation in the last month.
Okay.
Very important. So I would like to give thanks to all the participants and only to remind them that we have been recording this presentation and they will be published in our website. So I will email with the date that this recording will be published. Thank you, and I hope to see you again in the next time, in the next webinar series that we organize, that we will organize. Thank you, and goodbye.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Gracias,
Bye.
Edmundo.
Gracias, Jorge.